That land was supposed to save you. So why is my name the only one missing from the sale contract? My name is Rachel Cooper. I'm 34. I live in Seattle. And the night my family finally showed me who they really were, the room smelled like Costco pizza and cheap red wine. We were in my parents' split-level house in Tacoma, the same house I helped them save from foreclosure 3 years earlier. Fox News was murmuring in the background, the dishwasher was running, and my younger brother, Kyle, had his feet up on the coffee table like he owned the place. On my lap was a manila folder my aunt had accidentally slipped into the wrong envelope at the county clerk's office. Inside that folder was a copy of a sales contract for a piece of land in Oregon. My land. The 40-acre forest property my grandfather left only to me in his will. Except on this contract, the seller wasn't me. The sellers were listed as Cooper Family Land LLC, Manager, Richard Cooper. Members, Richard Cooper, Diane Cooper, Kyle Cooper. My dad, my mom, my brother. No Rachel. My chest went hollow. My own last name looked like a stranger's on that white paper. I read the numbers twice. They were about to sell my grandfather's land, my safety net, for $640,000. And I hadn't even known it was on the market. I placed the contract back on the table very gently, like it was something that might explode. "Dad," I said, my voice somehow steady. "What is this?" He didn't meet my eyes. He just took a long sip of wine and said the sentence I will never forget. "You're overreacting, Rach. It's family property. We just put it where it belongs." In that moment, something in me finally snapped. Because for the last 10 years, everything family meant me. My credit, my overtime, my vacation days, my sanity. Now it also meant my inheritance. And they were already in the middle of selling it. Right there, with greasy paper plates in front of us, and my brother scrolling through his betting app, I realized, if I didn't finally choose myself, they were going to take everything. This is the story of how the overworked, responsible daughter stopped being the family's safety net and became the woman who dragged her own parents and brother into court to get her life back. How I became the family's full-time lifeline. I didn't start out as the strong one. Growing up, I was just the kid who did her homework on time and remembered dentist appointments. We lived in a working-class suburb outside Tacoma. Dad was a mechanic until his back gave out. Mom worked part-time at a grocery store, always between jobs. Money was tight, but they made a point of telling us that family sticks together. By family, they mostly meant Rachel will figure it out. I was that kid who filled out FAFSA forms by herself. I taught myself how to compare student loan interest rates on a library computer. While my friends worried about prom dresses, I was comparing federal versus private loans. I went to the University of Washington on a mix of scholarships and debt. I worked at Starbucks, graded papers for a professor, tutored high schoolers in math. There were weeks I slept 4 hours a night. I told myself it was temporary. I had a plan. Get a degree in computer science. Get a good tech job. Get out. And I did. Sort of. By 24, I'd landed a junior project manager job at a tech company in Seattle. The pay was more than my parents had ever made. My coworkers complained about kombucha flavors in the office fridge, and I was quietly wiring $200 here and $300 there to help Mom catch up on bills. At first, it felt good, like I was doing what a grateful daughter is supposed to do. Just until we get through this rough patch, Mom would say. The rough patch somehow lasted a decade. When the 2008 crash fallout finally caught up to my parents, they almost lost the house. Guess who put their name on the line to refinance? You have the best credit score, sweetie, Dad said, sliding the paperwork across the table. You're so lucky. You'll help us, right? I was 26 and terrified of them ending up homeless. I signed. The bank officer smiled at me like I was a real adult. My stomach churned the whole drive home. From that point on, my life split into two versions. At work, I was the competent project manager people trusted with multi-million-dollar software launches. At home, I was the human ATM who bailed everyone out. Need a new transmission? Ask Rachel. Medical bill and collections? Ask Rachel. Kyle just needs a head start on rent after getting fired again? Ask Rachel. I always said yes. Not because I was weak, because I was tired, scared, and so deep inside the role of good daughter that I couldn't even see it was killing me. Enter Grandpa Henry, the first time I felt truly safe. The only person who never asked me for anything was my grandfather, Henry Cooper. He lived in a small town in Central Oregon, in a one-story house with a sagging porch and a backyard that opened into what looked like endless woods. When I was a kid, those woods felt like magic. He'd take me walking under the tall pines, pointing out deer tracks, teaching me how to tell a Douglas fir from a spruce. This land's the only thing that ever made me feel rich, he'd say. Not money rich, soul rich. He worked at a sawmill his whole life. When the mill shut down, he lived on his pension and Social Security. He drove an old Ford truck until it literally died on the highway. Every Thanksgiving, we'd drive down from Washington to see him. Every time, he'd slip me a 20 or a 50 when my parents weren't looking. For your brain fund, he'd whisper. Get yourself free. Don't you let anyone shackle you with their bad choices. I didn't understand that fully until much later. The summer I turned 22, he took me further into the woods than we usually went. After 20 minutes of hiking, the trees opened up into a clearing with a small, weathered cabin. It had peeling paint, a rusty metal roof, and a wraparound porch that looked like it would collapse if you breathed too hard. This is all mine, he said, spreading his arms to take in the clearing, the cabin, the trees. 40 acres. I bought it cheap in '79 when land was going for pennies. Then he said the thing that changed my life. One day, it's going to be yours. He wasn't sentimental about much, but he was deadly serious at that moment. You're the only one who shows up, kiddo, he said. Your dad's always too busy. Your brother shows up when he needs gas money. You come here with casseroles and fix my Wi-Fi. This land's not going to the people who treat me like an ATM. I cried the whole drive back to Seattle. I told myself not to believe it. Old people say things. Wills get messy. Families get weird. But it planted a seed of something in me I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Hope. The will that changed everything. Grandpa died when I was 29. I got the call on a Tuesday morning, right as I was about to step into a meeting about increasing sprint velocity. My world stopped. The meeting did not. I flew down to Oregon that night. The funeral was small. Lots of old men from the closed mill, a few neighbors. My parents came. Kyle came late, in a hoodie, eyes bloodshot, reeking of weed. After the cemetery, we met at a small lawyer's office downtown for the reading of the will. I wasn't expecting much. Maybe his old truck, maybe his coin collection. Instead, the lawyer adjusted his glasses and read, "To my granddaughter, Rachel Cooper, I leave full ownership of my 40-acre parcel of land and the cabin at 214 Miller Ridge Road. It is my explicit wish that no one else's name be added to this deed without her voluntary consent." Silence. I remember Mom's face going pale, Dad's jaw tensing, Kyle staring at his phone, then looking up, suddenly interested. Me? I was shaking so hard I could barely sign the acknowledgement. The lawyer handed me a folder with the deed, the property survey, and a note in Grandpa's handwriting. "For your brain, for your freedom, for when you finally decide you've taken enough." On the drive back, my parents were weirdly quiet. Kyle, though, was full of ideas. "You know what you should do?" he said from the back seat. "Sell it and pay off Mom and Dad's house. Grandpa would have wanted that." I stared out the window at the pine trees blurring past. Grandpa had been very clear. This was mine. For the first time in my life, I let that thought settle in without apology. No matter what happened, layoffs, medical emergencies, family drama, I had something that was just mine. Something I could sell or keep or build on. An exit hatch. A future. I had no idea how hard my family would work to convince me otherwise. From "just help us out" to "you don't really own it anyway." Right after the will, the pressure started. At first, it was wrapped in common sense. Dad sat me down at their kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and a calculator. "Land sitting there does nothing for you," he said. "We're all one family. We should use it." By use it, he meant sell half the trees to a logging company, use the money to pay off their mortgage, maybe put a down payment on a bigger truck for Kyle's business, a rotating carousel of Deliveroo, DoorDash, and side hustles that never quite paid the bills. Mom chimed in with her favorite line. "Sweetie, what's the point of having something if your family is struggling?" I felt that line like a hook in my chest. It's the same line they'd used when they borrowed my refund checks in college, when they asked me to co-sign, when they needed help with utilities. I told them I wasn't selling. Not yet. I wanted time to think. Maybe I'd build a tiny A-frame and rent it on Airbnb. Maybe I'd keep it as my retirement plan. Maybe I'd just keep it as a quiet place to breathe. Dad's jaw tightened. "You're being selfish," he said. "We raised you. We sacrificed for you. That land should help all of us, not just you." I left that conversation shaking, with guilt pounding in my ears. But I still said no. It's just a tax thing. The LLC trap. The next stage of the escalation took 2 years. During that time, my life at work got even more intense. We had layoffs. I inherited 2 people's jobs without their salaries. I found myself answering Slack messages at midnight, sleeping with my phone on my pillow like it was a life support device. I kept telling myself it was temporary. Just until the product launch, just until the next quarter, just until my promotion. At home, the just until never ended either. Kyle got into sports betting. He called it investing. Mom called it bad luck. I called it what it was, a slow-motion disaster. He'd disappear for days, then show up at my apartment frantic. "I just need $600 to clear this one thing," he'd say. "If I miss it, my whole account gets locked." We both knew he'd be back. We both knew I'd probably say yes. I was constantly exhausted, constantly anxious, constantly trying to plug holes in other people's boats while my own was taking on water. That's when Dad pitched the LLC idea. We were at a 4th of July barbecue in their backyard. The grill was smoking, kids were running around with sparklers, and Dad casually dropped it into conversation like he was talking about the weather. "You know," he said, flipping burgers, "I talked to a guy at church who does real estate. He said you'd get killed on taxes if you ever sell that land as an individual." He went on, like a salesman who'd been rehearsing. "What you should do is put it into an LLC. That way it's protected, and we can all manage it together. Make it a real family asset. You'd still own it, of course. It's just a tax thing." My stomach twisted. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a project manager in tech. I know how to smell complexity dressed up as simple. "Who would be on the LLC?" I asked. "Oh, just us," he said. "Me, your mom, you, and Kyle. We'll make you majority member, don't worry." Mom chimed in from the patio, wine glass in hand. "It would be such a relief to know it's all organized, honey. God forbid something happens to you and the family's frozen out." Kyle, lying in a lawn chair scrolling his phone, looked up with a smirk. "Yeah, Rach, don't you trust your own family?" That question lodged in my throat like a stone. Did I trust them? With my time? I had, over and over. With my credit? I had, and nearly destroyed myself doing it. With the one thing Grandpa had given me specifically to get free? I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream it. Instead, I said, "Let me think about it." The slow boil. From there, the pressure intensified in quiet, suffocating ways. Random links Dad texted me about, benefits of family LLCs. Articles Mom printed from Facebook about how probate destroys families. Comments at dinner like, "Once the land is in the LLC, we can finally fix up the cabin." Or, "When we start renting it on Airbnb." Notice the we. Meanwhile, my life was falling apart in slow motion. I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. I'd wake up with Slack notifications already waiting, fall asleep with my laptop open on the nightstand. My manager praised my can-do attitude and reliability. I learned that in corporate speak, reliable often means we can dump everything on her. She'll never say no. My friends started to drift away because I canceled on them so often. I lived on cold brew and DoorDash. My eye twitched for 3 months straight. I kept wiring money to my parents for a few things that came up. I kept sending Kyle just enough so he doesn't get evicted. Every time I told myself, once the promotion comes through, I'll set boundaries. Once the big bonus hits, I'll say no. Once. And every time, my parents added just a little more moral pressure. "Your brother doesn't have your opportunities. We're getting older. We won't be around forever. You're so good with money, sweetie. We're just not." I started to believe that maybe the LLC was a compromise. I'd still own it. I'd just let them help manage it. That was the mindset I was in when the papers showed up in my email. The signature that wasn't really an answer. One Thursday afternoon, while I was juggling 3 Zoom calls and a production incident, an email popped up from my dad. Subject line, "Docs, super urgent, just sign real quick." Attached was a PDF from some online legal service. Cooper Family Land LLC Operating Agreement. pages and pages of legalese. Member names, ownership percentages. I tried to skim it while responding to a Slack thread about a rollback. Dad texted me. "You don't need to read all that. It's boilerplate. We put you at 51% like we said. Just sign so we can file it before the end of the month, or it messes up the tax year. Don't overthink it, kiddo. It's just paperwork." I scrolled to the signature page. The numbers blurred. 51% for me. 16.3% each for Mom, Dad, and Kyle. My stomach clenched, but my brain was fried. I'd been in meetings since 8 a.m. My manager was pinging me. My team was waiting on my decision about a deploy. I glanced back at the first few pages. No obvious red flags I could recognize without a law degree. This is what burnout does. It steals your capacity to protect yourself. It tells you, just make this one thing go away. So, I signed. I told myself I could always change it later if something felt off. Spoiler, I could not. The call that finally woke me up. For about a year after that, nothing seemed to change. I still visited the land in Oregon twice a year, taking long weekends to breathe pine air and pretend I didn't have 100 unanswered emails. The cabin was still falling apart. I kept a running list in my head. Fix roof. Replace rotten porch boards. Upgrade electrical. I kept thinking, once things calm down at work, I'll start fixing it up. Meanwhile, my parents treated the land like a theoretical thing. They'd say stuff like, "When we really get the LLC going," or "Once we decide what to do with our land." And I'd feel this little pinch in my chest. But I was too tired to fight it. The breaking point came from a stranger's voice. I was in an Uber in downtown Seattle on a rainy Tuesday, scrolling through emails, when a voicemail popped up from an unknown Oregon number. "Hi, this is Janet from Pine Ridge Title Company. Just calling to confirm some details for the sale of the Miller Ridge property. We want to make sure we have all the members of Cooper Family Land LLC represented properly. Give us a call back." Sale. The word felt like a punch. I replayed the message 3 times. I had never signed anything about a sale. My hands started shaking. Right there, in the back of that Uber, with the driver humming along to the radio, I realized something. They weren't just talking about the land as a family asset anymore. They were acting like I didn't exist. I called the title company back immediately. The woman on the phone was polite, professional, and terrifyingly matter-of-fact. "Oh yes," she said. "We have a pending sale scheduled for next month. Cooper Family Land LLC is selling the property to a development firm out of Portland." My mouth went dry. "And who is representing the LLC?" I managed. She read from her screen. "Manager, Richard Cooper. Members, Richard Cooper, Diane Cooper, and Kyle Cooper." I gripped the phone harder. "What about Rachel Cooper?" I asked. "I'm a 51% member." There was a pause. "I'm not showing that name on the articles of organization, ma'am," she said. "The state filings list 3 members only." I felt like the world tilted. The car, the gray sky, the rain on the windows, all of it blurred. "Can you email me whatever you have on file?" I asked. "Sure. What's your address?" I gave her my work email with trembling lips. 5 minutes later, a PDF hit my inbox. Articles of Organization for Cooper Family Land, LLC. An operating agreement that was similar to the one I'd signed, but not identical. Member list: Dad, Mom, Kyle. Manager: Dad. No mention of me. I opened the signature page. There, in shaky black squiggles, was my name, except it wasn't my signature. Not exactly. The R was wrong. The loop on the H was too high. The line under my name went the wrong direction. I stared at it until I felt nauseous. Someone had taken the document I signed a year earlier and filed a different version with the state. Someone had scrubbed me out. Someone in my own family. The Uber driver asked if I was okay. I heard myself say, "Yeah, just a work thing," while my heart pounded so loud I could barely hear him. Inside, something was finally, irrevocably done. Done making excuses. Done giving the benefit of the doubt. Done telling myself, they don't mean it like that. Grandpa had given me the land for a reason, and I was about to lose it, and possibly my entire future, because I was too exhausted and scared of being selfish to fight back. That evening, for the first time in my life, I did something my family never expected. I called a lawyer. Choosing myself over family harmony. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed replaying every moment. Dad telling me it was just a tax thing. Mom saying, "What's the point of having something if your family is struggling?" Kyle calling me selfish for not selling. My own hand shaking as I signed that PDF I didn't fully read. Shame, anger, grief, they all took turns punching me in the gut. At 3 a.m., I sat up, turned on my bedside lamp, and pulled out the folder with Grandpa's original will and deed he'd given me. The paper smelled faintly of dust and old wood. His handwritten note was on top, the ink a little faded. For your brain, for your freedom, for when you finally decide you've taken enough. I realized with a jolt that this, right now, was the moment he'd meant. I had taken enough. More than enough. My parents had my labor, my time, my credit, my peace. They were not going to have my inheritance too. Not without a fight. I made my decision in 3 steps. I decided to treat this as fraud, not family drama. No more minimizing. No more, they didn't mean to. They had removed my name from official documents and tried to sell my asset without my consent. That's fraud. I decided to separate love from accountability. I could still love them, or maybe I couldn't. Maybe that would change. But either way, I didn't owe them my financial future. Love without boundaries had turned me into their safety net. I was done being their crash pad. I decided I was allowed to be the main character of my own life, not the side character in my brother's story, not the supporting character in my parents' retirement plan. At 9 a.m. sharp, as my team spammed my phone about some JIRA ticket, I opened a browser and typed, "Oregon Real Estate Attorney LLC member fraud." I clicked the first firm that mentioned disputes within family-owned LLCs. Her name was Melissa Chang. I filled out the contact form, attached the PDFs, and wrote, "My grandfather left me 40 acres and a cabin. My family convinced me to put it in an LLC. Now I've discovered they removed my name and are selling it without me. I think they forged my signature. I don't know what to do, but the sale is scheduled for next month. Please help." I didn't expect to hear back quickly. She called me 2 hours later. Her voice was calm and direct. "Rachel, I've reviewed the documents you sent," she said. "First, I'm so sorry. Second, you're right. This isn't just a family misunderstanding. This is serious. I'd like to take your case." I felt tears sting my eyes. "Do I have a case?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. Yes, and if what you described is accurate, we have a strong one, but we need to move now. That was the moment I crossed an invisible line. I chose court over keeping the peace. I chose evidence over guilt. I chose myself. How we turned their family LLC into a legal disaster for them. Melissa laid out the strategy like a project plan, except this time I was the project. She broke it into clear steps. Step 1, stop the sale. First thing, she said, we file for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction to stop the sale from closing. She explained that as someone with a legitimate claim to membership, and as the original devisee of the land in Grandpa's will, I could argue that any sale without my participation would cause irreparable harm. She had me dig up Grandpa's will, the original deed listing his name, then the transfer to me, the operating agreement I actually signed, every email and text about the LLC. I forwarded everything. Within 24 hours, she had drafted a motion and filed it in Oregon State Court. 2 days later, we were on Zoom for the hearing. I watched the developer's lawyer blink in surprise as Melissa calmly explained that there was a potential forgery issue and that an alleged 51% member of the LLC had been left out entirely. The judge granted a temporary stay on the sale. Sales paused, Melissa texted after. They can't close without risking liability. My parents had no idea yet. Step 2, get the paper trail. Next, we went after the documents. Melissa filed a petition with the state to obtain all LLC filings, including IP addresses for the online forms. A motion for expedited discovery given the attempted sale. Subpoenas to the online legal service that generated the operating agreement, the notary who allegedly witnessed my signature, the title company. Meanwhile, she had me do my own homework. Go through every email from your dad around the time you signed something, she said. Look for phrases like, just sign, boilerplate, we'll handle the rest. Courts don't love manipulation. I spent an entire Saturday scrolling through old messages. I found a text where Dad said, we'll adjust the percentages on our end. Just sign what I sent. An email from Mom. If you keep nitpicking everything, we'll never get this filed in time. Trust us, honey. A message from Kyle in our family group chat. Don't make this complicated like you always do. Sign the thing. Each one felt like a tiny stab. Each one was also evidence. Step 3, the confrontation. I knew we couldn't hide the legal action forever. As soon as the developer realized the sale was on hold, they'd talk to Dad. As soon as Dad got that call, hell would break loose. Melissa suggested I tell them after our first filings, not before. People do dumb things when they get scared, she said. We want them making those mistakes on record. The night before the first status hearing, I drove down to Tacoma. That's the dinner I told you about at the beginning. Pizza, cheap wine, my brother's feet on the table. I slid the manila folder onto the table. Inside were the developer's sale contract naming Cooper Family Land LLC as the sole seller, the LLC filings without my name, a copy of our court motion with the judge's stamp. I watched Dad's face as he read. He went from annoyed to confused to something like anger, though not the ashamed kind, the how dare you catch me kind. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Rachel, how could you do this? She whispered. Dragging your own family into court. I laughed. It came out sharp and ugly. How could I? I said. How could you scrub my name off the LLC and sell the land Grandpa left me? Dad slammed his hand on the table. That land was never meant to be just yours, he snapped. We told your grandfather we'd make sure it stayed in the family. You were too selfish to sell when we needed it. We had to do something. Kyle chimed in, defensive and sullen. You're making this a huge deal, he said. It's just land. We were going to help you. You can't even maintain it. My vision tunneled. That just land is the only thing I have that isn't tied to your bad decisions, I said quietly. And you tried to steal it from me. Mom started with the guilt. We're your parents. Everything we've done is for this family. Look at your brother. He's struggling. You have a good job. You don't even need that land. There it was. The core belief they'd had all along. Because I appeared to be doing better, my things were automatically family property. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but my voice was clear. I've hired a lawyer, I said. The sale is on hold. We're going to court. From now on, don't contact me directly about this. All communication goes through her. Mom gasped like I'd slapped her. You wouldn't, she whispered. You wouldn't really go through with this. For the first time in my life, I looked her in the eye and said, Watch me. Then I picked up my folder, walked out, and drove back to Seattle, sobbing the whole way, but not turning around. Step 4. Build the case. What followed were months of depositions, filings, and slow, grinding truth-telling. The evidence piled up. The notary admitted he'd witnessed my signature without me present, based solely on my dad's word. The online legal service showed the IP address for the altered operating agreement belonged to my parents' home network. The original PDF I'd signed showed different membership percentages than the version filed with the state. Text messages showed Dad joking with a friend. We had to Rachel-proof the land so she doesn't sell it out from under us. Melissa built our argument carefully. The will clearly left the land to me alone. Any transfer into an LLC that effectively stripped me of control had to be voluntary and informed. The altered filings constituted fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The attempted sale without my consent was a breach of both Oregon LLC law and common decency. We weren't just asking to stop the sale. We were asking the court to void the fraudulent LLC filings, reinstate my sole ownership of the land, potentially award damages for my legal fees and emotional distress. I can't promise we'll get everything, Melissa said one afternoon over Zoom, but I like our odds. For the first time in a long time, I liked them too. What they lost, what I got back. The day of the final hearing, the courtroom in Oregon was smaller than I expected. Fluorescent lights, scuffed benches, a faded state seal on the wall. My parents sat on the other side of the room with their attorney, a man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Kyle slouched behind them in a too-big suit. I sat next to Melissa, hands folded so tightly my knuckles were white. The judge, a woman in her 60s with tired eyes, had a thick stack of documents in front of her. Wills, deeds, LLC filings, text message transcripts. She read her ruling slowly. I won't remember the exact legal language forever, but I will never forget the feeling of 3 specific sentences. The court finds that plaintiff, Rachel Cooper, is the sole rightful owner of the property located at 214 Miller Ridge Road, previously held in the name of Henry Cooper. The court finds that the alterations made to the Cooper Family Land LLC operating agreement and membership structure were executed without plaintiff's knowledge or consent and constitute fraudulent conduct by defendants Richard and Diane Cooper. All filings purporting to remove plaintiff as a member of Cooper Family Land LLC are hereby void. Any attempted sale of the property without plaintiff's participation is enjoined. Title shall revert to plaintiff in fee simple. In plain English, the LLC paper games, gone. The sale, dead. The land, back in my name, just mine. The judge went further. She ordered my parents and Kyle to pay my attorney's fees, the notary to be referred to the Secretary of State for possible disciplinary action, a formal notice to be recorded in the county land records stating that any encumbrance or contract based on the fraudulent LLC filings was invalid. My parents' attorney tried to object, mumbling stuff about family misunderstandings. The judge cut him off. "This isn't a misunderstanding," she said flatly. "This is a pattern. Miss Cooper may be your client's daughter, but she is also a legal person with rights. Those rights were violated." Mom sobbed softly. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Kyle muttered under his breath, "You happy now?" loud enough for me to hear. I didn't answer, because happiness wasn't what I felt at first. I felt relief, like a physical thing. My shoulders dropped. My lungs worked again. I also felt grief for the family I thought I had, for the years I'd spent bending myself into knots to be good, for the version of me that believed love meant endless sacrifice. After the hearing, Mom tried to catch my arm in the hallway. "Rachel, please," she said, mascara streaked. "We can work this out between us. We're family." I stepped back. "We could have worked it out between us when you had a choice," I said quietly. "You chose to lie and file secret paperwork instead. I'm just choosing to live with the truth." She flinched like I'd slapped her. Dad tried anger. "You'll regret this when we're gone," he said. "You'll be all alone." I looked at Melissa, standing solidly at my side. I thought about my friends in Seattle who'd offered me couches and wine and distraction through all this. I thought about Grandpa's note. "I'm not as alone as you think," I said. Then I walked out of that courthouse without looking back. What my life looks like now, and what I want you to hear. It's been a year since that ruling. The land in Oregon is quiet again. The first time I went back after the court case, I drove down alone. No parents, no brother, no tense family meetings. Just me, my little Subaru, and a trunk full of groceries and tools. The cabin was still rough, peeling paint, sagging porch, but this time, when I stepped onto that porch, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I fixed what I could. I scrubbed years of grime off the windows. I replaced 3 rotting boards on the porch, watching my own hands measure and cut and nail. I strung new solar lights along the railing, little warm circles glowing in the dark. At sunset, I sat on the steps with a mug of tea, watching the sky go from gold to deep blue over the trees. I thought about my grandfather, about his rough hands and soft eyes, about how he'd trusted me to know when enough had finally come. I realized I was actually proud of myself, not for being endlessly accommodating, but for finally drawing a line. The rest of my life changed too. Here's the unexpected part. Once I broke the pattern with my family, I started breaking it everywhere. At work, I finally stopped being the yes to everything woman. I had a hard, honest conversation with my manager. I've been taking on other people's responsibilities for years, I said. I'm burning out. If something is critical enough for me to own, it needs to come with title and compensation. If not, it can stay with its actual owner. He blinked. Then, slowly, he adjusted. I stopped answering Slack after 7 p.m. I used my vacation days. I said, "No, that's not on my plate," without writing a 3-paragraph apology. Shockingly, I did not get fired. In fact, my performance improved. My team respected my boundaries more. I even got a promotion, one that did come with the title and salary. In my personal life, I started seeing the red flags I used to ignore. The friend who only called when she needed help moving? I stopped rearranging my life for her last-minute crises. The guy I'd been seeing who joked about me being wife material because I took care of everything. I realized that was just a nicer version of what my family had always said. I stopped confusing being useful with being loved. What happened to my family? People always ask me that part, even if they're too polite to say it out loud. The short answer? We're not close. My parents are still angry. They paid my legal fees by taking out yet another loan. They moved into a smaller house after selling theirs. Kyle moved in with a friend. He still texts occasionally, usually something like, "You know Mom's still crushed about what you did, right?" I read the messages, feel a sting, and then put my phone down. Because here's what I know now. I didn't destroy my family. The decisions they made over and over again, to lie, to manipulate, to treat me like an asset instead of a person, are what cracked us. My choice to finally protect myself just revealed the cracks already there. I don't hate them, but I don't let them run my life anymore. We have limited contact. No more money, no more co-signing, no more, "It's just a tax thing." My inheritance is mine again. So is my time. So is my nervous system. What I want you, the overworked, overgiving woman, to hear. If you're a woman watching this, especially if you're in your late 20s, 30s, early 40s, and you feel like you're everyone's safety net, I want to say this as clearly as I can. Being the strong one doesn't mean you were born to be used. Family is not a free pass to violate your boundaries. Love and money live in the same house, but they are not the same thing. If you've ever put your name on someone else's loan because you have better credit, sent money you really couldn't afford because you're the responsible one, said yes to something big because you were too exhausted to fight, been told you're selfish for wanting to keep what's yours, I see you. You might think the right thing, the good daughter thing, is to keep giving until it doesn't hurt anymore. Here's the truth I had to learn the hard way. It will always hurt. The pain doesn't stop when they finally change. It stops when you do. Maybe your version of my land is your savings account, your house, your time, your weekends, your emotional bandwidth. Whatever it is, you're allowed to protect it. You're allowed to say, "I need to think about this. I'm not comfortable signing that. No, I won't put my name on that loan. If I mean this much to you, you won't ask me to risk everything." You're allowed to call a lawyer. You're allowed to go to therapy. You're allowed to go no contact if that's what keeps you safe. And you're allowed to build a life where your worth isn't measured by how much you sacrifice. My balcony moment. A few months ago, I finished enough work on the cabin to make it livable. I turned one corner of the main room into a little workspace with a desk and a big window. I brought down my laptop, turned off my phone, and spent 3 days sketching out a personal project I'd always told myself I was too busy for. On the last night, I stepped outside with a blanket and a mug of tea. The stars were ridiculous, bright and close, like someone had spilled glitter on black velvet. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who took every shift, signed every form, paid every bill, silenced every instinct. I wanted to go back in time, wrap my arms around her, and whisper, "You don't have to earn your right to exist by saving everybody else." So I'm going to say it to you instead. If your family, your job, your relationship is built on you constantly giving just a little more than you have, I hope my story is your sign. You're allowed to be the main character. You're allowed to keep the land, keep the house, keep the account, keep your peace. You are not selfish for refusing to be stolen from, on paper or in your soul. Grandpa used to tell me, "The forest doesn't apologize for taking up space. It just grows." I'm learning to do the same. And if you're ready, really ready, to stop apologizing for existing, I hope you'll grow with me. Because the moment you finally decide you've taken enough, that's not the end of your story. That's the beginning.